My name is Tom Anderson. I'm with TDA Corporate Training downtown Chattanooga. And if you're all interested in it, that's why you're here. You're going to have a tough time today. I don't see it.
It's fun.
My job is as a senior manager of that is to make sure our accredited training programs, we do all that we can. When they're not accredited, it tends to run into lots of money to get them fixed. Anybody want to venture? Yes. We'll get into this a little later. Probation is not a good thing. Training program. It could be non-licensed operator, it could be the RP program. We've got evaluations coming up within code this year. Just having a watch bar, we've got in the summer. Good take crowds for free and that. If the program goes on probation, what do you think it costs to get that program fixed? How many? One. I got 1 million here. Anybody want to challenge 1 million? I like that. What? 2 million. I got 2. Anybody else? 20. Okay, 1 million. Okay. Right now, the industry average, believe it or not, folks, is about $10 million to fix a program. Okay. That's a lot of things that aren't going to happen at a site when you're spending money to fix a training program. It shouldn't be broken. So, what does that got to do with what we're doing here tonight? Probably nothing. Okay. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about how training and nuclear job, you don't get a job without training in this business. All right? So you're going to get trained. All of you make it through and proceed on into the industry, whether it's with TGA or whomever. You can't have one without the other. So know that they go hand in hand. You will be trained until you're so tired of being trained, and then guess what? We'll train you some more. Okay? Because it's the way we do business. It's meeting the industry expectations. So in front of you, and I've been doing this for, about 30 years. I actually had a career before that. So yeah, let's put it this way. I'm looking for retirement soon, right? Okay. You guys? Get the lottery maybe. Yeah, Friday night, right? Okay, anyway. In front of you have your a handout, which is basically the slides that we have up here. We're going to talk through a little bit. And if you want, and you have questions, at any time, please ask questions. Don't feel like you have to wait till the end, all right, for a formal Q&A or anything like that. Just blurt it out. It's okay. Except Lisa. You're not allowed to blurt it out. Okay, Lisa, go on.
I was just going to ask you.
Sure.
Can you tell me on what types of training programs TDA has specifically? Because they may not, I know some of them know NLO, some of them know RP, but they may not know.
You got
like there's some, yeah.
We're going to get there.
I'm sorry.
We're going to get there. Okay. So again, Lisa, no blurting. That's kidding.
I'll be quiet.
I love her. You know. But I also have my business card here. If you want to take one, that's fine. Feel free to. I usually give them out for the purpose of, when you go to restaurants and they have a little fish bowl, if you drop this in, maybe I'll get a free lunch. You never know, right? It's probably useless after that. But anyway, it'll be up here if you all want to take one. My point is, seriously, if you have questions later, you want to email me or call me, please do. That's fine. More than happy to try to help you out and explain some things. Okay, so you can't have one without the other. Nuclear jobs and nuclear training. So how many are in the non-licensed operator program? 1, 2, 3. Okay. RP? Did pretty much our best. Okay. What are you guys doing? Huh? Oh, okay, good. Okay, so let's go on. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about systematic approach. Lisa and I kind of exchanged emails, Cindy, a little bit a couple weeks ago, and so we want to get a little understanding of how this whole thing comes together. Because you guys are all in these programs, an integral part of this effort going forward as well. And then the accreditation process, and that's where the bucks get involved in. So, talk about how the training is for continuous improvement, obviously. That's why we train, and we do what? Train, good. Okay. That's good for this time of night. Okay. Train, and we train. And then, okay, as an active participant in training, because we expect that. It's not just people talking, so like I'm telling you right now, ask questions, give me comments, give me feedback, tell me what you don't understand. That's okay. prepare for the program, a training program to support your success as a nuclear worker. Hopefully one day you'll all have that opportunity to come work at one of our sites. It'd be great. We're always looking for people. So, our goal, provide tools for a well-trained and qualified workforce to execute our assigned tasks safely and error-free. So with that, I forgot which one's the green button.
The very top one.
Top one, great. Okay, what's wrong with that picture?
No
No gloves, no, yeah, right? But that was back when I had hair. I mean, that wasn't me. That's not me. Smart, I like it was said that. Okay. That's from a long time ago. So the point is, no, we don't train like that. We train the correct way. We don't let anything off. So whatever you do in the plant or expected to do in the plant is how your training program will be designed. Right? So everything that you do in the plant, you do it in training. Hard hats, gloves, whatever it takes. Okay? We have some objectives very quickly. History of nuclear power, we'll get into that real quick. There's 5 phases of the systematic approach and what each of those briefly does, very briefly, just to tell you how this all comes together. That's the idea of the day. How training decisions are made, your role in the program, the 6 info accreditation objectives, that's the one that leads to the bucks, okay? The big bucks, and then how it's maintained going forward. So, where did all this come from? Do you think we just do this because it's fun? Well, it is fun. Okay, we enjoy what we do. But why else do we do it? Well, let's take a look real quick. Accreditation didn't exist. Systematic approach wasn't really being used in the nuclear industry prior to the 3 Mile Island accident way back in 1979. I'm not going to ask you how many were born. That's usually we find out as some of us get much older, and so we all come in much younger. A lot of people, and that's a challenge. A lot of our students sit there and say, 1979, I wasn't born yet. Okay, yeah, okay. But regardless, guess what? It was such an impact on our industry and changed significantly the way we do business today. And ever since then, we teach you about it anyway, because you've got to understand why that had such a significant impact on the industry. Up until that point, training was pretty much, you know, I don't know, Lisa, you're an operator, I'm a new guy, just hired on. So Cindy says, you know, just kind of follow around with Lisa and see what she does. That was my training program before '79. Quite that bad. There was a little bit of classroom stuff, but not much. Right? Not much. Really, it really was kind of a lot of what we call today OJT. Now, what's wrong with that?
I may not know what I'm doing.
You may not know what you're doing. You may do a lot of things right, but you might do some things less than right. Right? So what do I learn? For bad behaviors, or, you know, and so on. October '79, INPO started. What does INPO stand for? Does everybody know?
Sure.
INPO. No, it's not a misspelling. It's not really Alpo. INPO. Now, what is it? Institute of Nuclear Power Operations. Good. You will, as you get into this industry more and more, hear that term a lot, every single day. INPO is the governing operating group that really oversees all the nuclear industry. How many plants in the nuclear industry right now in the country? Any idea?
116.
How many? 100, about 104 or 5, something like that, somewhere in that neighborhood, give or take. But yeah, a little over 100. So there's a lot of plants. So they have the responsibility to oversee what we do and how we do it. I worked at INPO for 7 years as an accreditation team manager and plant evaluator and that kind of thing. So I got very used to going out and looking at a lot of different plants around the country and some even in foreign countries, and looking at their training programs, the quality of their training programs, etc. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot. Even though you supposedly have bringing expertise, you still always are learning. So education in this business never stops, is my point. Okay? So INPO is incorporated. Training and education were identified as one of the four cornerstones. There's 3 others like evaluation, assistance, and so on, but training and education, that's how important it was. In fact, post-TMI, right, what was called the Kemeny Commission. The Kemeny Commission was put together by President Carter, Jimmy Carter, the old peanut farmer, right? And Jimmy said, you know, we need to find out what happened here. Kind of a root cause analysis. So he put this commission together. John Kemeny was the president of Dartmouth University up in New Hampshire. And he was the lead on this commission. But one of the things they came out with, and they're significant in their findings, was that the industry, two really key things. We don't train very well. Now let's remember this 1979, okay? We didn't train very well, like I was just mentioning, and we don't learn from each other. We use lessons learned or operating experience, which we talk about quite a bit in our business. Operating experience drives us. In fact, prior to TMI, because we didn't use operating experience in any way, shape, or form very well back in those days, the accident that actually occurred at TMI had a similar accident occurred 1 year earlier at Davis Best, but it never got published. It never got, the lessons learned never got shared. Bottom line is, had we been doing that and had that forethought, this possibly, TMI possibly may not have ever happened. Same power operator relief valve was stuck open, and it went downhill from there. Okay. So, point being, one of the key lessons was we don't use lessons learned very well, operating experience very well. We have come a long way since then. Okay, it's really gotten much better. 1985, the National Academy for Nuclear Training was founded. As a result of all this, it doesn't all happen overnight, unfortunately. It takes a little bit of time. And the Academy was put together, and that purposes was to look at how are we going to accredit, how are we going to evaluate, how are we going to make sure that the training for our operators and our maintenance people and our radiation protection people and our engineers meets standards. What are those standards? Well, the industry got together and said, here's the standards that we have to have. And they're pretty high. They're pretty high. So the Academy got started, and it's been running fine ever since. 93, just so happens, all this really came out of, going back up here, right after TMI, the NRC said, you know what? You guys don't know how to govern yourselves. You can't do a very good job with this, so we're going to do it for you. And that's where INPO got started, because the industry got together and said, wait a minute, we can do this. We know the right things to do. We just, no, okay. So they got together, and INPO started, so it's kind of a self-governing organization, right? We pay a TVA, as an example, pays a lot of dues every year, millions of dollars, to fund INPO, as do all the rest of the utilities, member utilities. Right? And every utility is a member. Okay? If I hide behind the post back there, guys, just go something. Okay? All right? But every utility that has a nuclear plant, has an operating license, is a member of INPO. And that, there's all kinds of points, and I can't even begin to tell you how the formula works anymore, but it adds up to millions of dollars every year to fund what they do. Paid my salary at one point for a number of years to go out and look at and provide assistance and operating experience and lessons learned and so on. Okay? So that's what that's all about. Questions? Anything so far? Everything makes sense? Sure? Okay. All right. You go like that, I can pick on you. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Good. My point was that down here, rather, it was a law. It's part of the law. Okay? What the NRC said was, well, we're going to write a law, a regulation, okay, what became law, that says how you're going to do business in the world of training. So, systematic approach got brought in. The whole ADDIE approach, which we'll get into in a few minutes, ADDIE got brought in, and how we design, develop, and implement our training, evaluate the training, and so on. And that's the same principles, believe it or not, that we're applying to the programs you guys are rolling here. All right? Because we're taking credit at TVA for what you're learning here. And so, but to that end, we have to make sure that the same standards are being met. So if you see my face, I was going to say something else, face around. I was around last year for a little bit. I've come to the Curriculum Review Committee meetings from time to time. I've been sat in some of the classes. I've recognized some faces. Probably going to be doing that again here in the next couple weeks, 3 weeks or so, just to catch once a year, you know, to say, been there, seen it, they're doing the right stuff, they're meeting our industry standards. Because when the accreditation teams come to look at what we're doing, and we're saying, hey, we got this great partnership with Chat State, we're taking credit for what they're learning there. The first thing they say is, and how do you know what they're learning is the right stuff? How do you know that it meets our industry standards? Been there, done that, seen it, okay, evaluated it essentially. So I'll be out, I'll maybe talk to some of you, I'll maybe sit in classes for sure, talk to the instructors and so on, okay? And then I'll put a little report together just for the record that says, been there, done that, looks good. All right? Every once in a while, we find something that can be better. So, for example, we were just looking at the cabinets down by the mock-up. And in the cabinets are a lot of the dress-out material, guard, right? Yeah, and that, I think that was, some of that type of stuff was a little bit short in supply last year, as I recall, last spring. So we wrote that in the report, got, I don't know, I don't even get it from TVA necessarily. We were trying to push and get that and say, this is a program that's helping us, and now we need to help the program. So that's what that's all about. Okay. So, so it's a law. It's not just, we don't just do this for the fun of it. It's a law. We are expected to do it. All right. In fact, the law says each nuclear power plant applicant, our applicant, so to speak, shall establish, implement, and maintain a training program derived from the systems approach to training, as defined in the Code of Federal Regulations. What's a systems approach to training? Anybody? Got an idea?
You've got a plan.
Yes, there's a process you follow. Right. You just don't willy-nilly say, I think, I sit in my little office and say, hey, I think they need to know this. No, that's not how it works. There's a systematic process where more heads are better than one, especially in my case. Okay? Where we get more heads together and you want to be able to identify what's the right training. So you do the analysis and the design and all that stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. But all this is just talking about what the code says. So there is a driver behind all this, folks. So when you say, why am I sitting in this class? What am I here to learn? Right? You're getting driven a little bit by what the law says. Right? We have to meet that law, or we get in trouble. Right? But we meet it through the accreditation process. That's the key. Make sense? So systematic analysis with jobs. We don't just say, any old job. No, we have to break it down. What are the tasks to perform a job? That kind of thing. Learning objectives are derived from the tasks. Training is designed around it. We evaluate, and the tests and evaluation, we're big on tests. I mean, it happens every week, all the time, every program. But that's how we evaluate or assess whether you got the knowledge. And if the knowledge is the right knowledge and you're successful, then the application is on the job, right? So the transfer of knowledge is important. And then evaluation and revision, that's real important too. Again, that's part of that lessons learned stuff, where we always look at ourselves very self-critically and say, how could this program have been better? So for example, at least I got to talk to you about this, by the way. Post-training evaluations, right? We want to be able to find out a little bit more about, what you all learned here. Was it beneficial to you when you actually got on the job? That's what it's all about. So that's one piece of it, and evaluations are very important. We evaluate like crazy as well. That's what we do. Okay, so that's important to all personnel and all training activities, whether instructors, supervisors, students, doesn't matter. Right? It's an orderly, logical approach, as Cindy was saying. It's a plan. Right? It actually, a lot of people associated with the nuclear industry think, oh, okay, we came up with this. No, we didn't. It's been around since a long time ago. Back in, some people say back in the early 40s, with the Air Force, it really started, but it did start in the military. And started very, way back when, where they had to break down, what do pilots do? How do they do it? You just don't just put people on a plane and say, go fly. Okay, it doesn't work that way. It's much more systematic than that. So we adopted that approach back in the 80s and have been applying it ever since. Okay. Questions on any of that, real quick? I'm going to brush past something. If you have a question, please ask. Here's a better kind of descriptor of the whole model and how our training programs are built. And to some degree, it affects exactly what you guys are going through here. So there's the analysis piece, as we talked about. There's 3 different types. Needs, job, and task. That's where we figure out what is it that we have to train you on. Right? That's the very basic piece. What is it we have to train you on? We design the training programs to actually use that analysis information to make it come through in a classroom setting. Development, we develop the materials, implement, actually conduct the training, and then finally evaluate, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Right? So that's a little, looks like a little bit of a goofy roadmap. Part over here is that evaluation feeds back, feeds back, feeds back, feeds back into all the other sections all the time. So we might find out that, geez, through evaluation, we trained them on the wrong stuff. Okay. So we go back up here to the analysis phase and then start the process over again. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often. Early days, it happened more frequently. Today, it's much more, it's better the way we do it, the way we do the business today. It's pretty scientific, so we don't end up spending a lot of time, money, and sitting behind the can to find out that after a semester, you've got trained on the wrong stuff. Okay, that's never good. And even when you are in the power plant and you're working, you don't want to spend the time, because time is money, right? So if you're sitting in your class for a week at whatever, $40 an hour, like that, $40 an hour, $40 an hour, I just picked it up. That's on the low side. That's on the low side. At $40 an hour, times 20 students in a class, maybe, whatever, right? You do the math. I can't. You do the math. Figure it out. That's a lot of money. Times 8 hours a day, 40 hours for the week, right? We don't want to miss the mark and find out that we did all this, which is no easy task in and of itself, to train you all and then find out that you still can't do the job. What the heck went wrong? So we're much more, that's why it's such a prognostic course, and it takes time to really do it right. So it's very difficult, but that's what a lot of us in this business are here for, to make sure that we're doing it right, so that what you get in your training program is hopefully always the right stuff, or pretty darn close to it. Okay? We use training committees, as I mentioned earlier. You guys have CRCs here for RP, for the operator program, and that's to review as collective bodies of folks. Are we on the right track? Are we doing the right stuff? Are we teaching the right things? And I don't know, any of you been involved with the curriculum review committee so far in your program? Yeah, okay, good. That's where I saw you. See, it wasn't the picture of the post office wall. I could have sworn it was, No. Okay, but that's important because, people like myself or Cindy or Lisa or whatever, we can sit around and say, we're teaching them the right stuff. This is good. You come along and you say, And more importantly, when you get out on the job, I mentioned post-training evaluations and that kind of feedback, that's where it really counts. That's why we survey and talk to you and all that stuff years down the road to keep finding out. Is it still making sense? Is it still working for you? What else do you need to know? Things do change. These power plants are dynamic, right? And the tasks and the equipment are very dynamic. So you have to keep learning new skills and basically new trades. Okay? So it's pretty important. So curriculum review committees are very, very important at the site, and we push real hard on them. Almost virtually every program of the 12. We're going to get to the 12, Lisa. I'm getting there, I promise. We're going to get to the 12 accredited programs. Every one of them's got a curriculum review committee, which typically meets almost monthly to review what we're doing, how we're doing it, how you all are doing. Right? And if we see trends starting to say, whoops, hey, this bunch of trainees having a problem here. Scores haven't been too good. What's wrong? Right? We want to figure out what's wrong. We go back to the analysis phase and try to figure out what's wrong. So it's a pretty complex effort. All right? You don't hear about the rest of that too much, but it typically does, as I said, consist of department managers, so that could be like the radiation protection manager at the site, training representatives usually, department training coordinator, that's a person who's actually in the department, like in the RP department, the operations department, whatever, chemistry, and they help coordinate the training between training and the line. So that we get the right people in the right classes at the right time. And at least 2 job incumbents. That means 2 people who have been trained in the program. So a lot of times we take the initial trainees as well. Find out, make sure how they're doing, and make sure we're on target with that. Okay? So the committees are very important, and we push real hard on those. Before you start training, it's going to improve performance, so on and so forth. You can read all of that. And I touched on a little bit about the analyses pieces before. That's not real important to you now. My point of putting that up there is simply to let you know that this doesn't just happen. We just don't open a book and say, this looks like good stuff to train on. Or it's not just Tom Anderson saying, this is good stuff to train on. No, there's a collective process that puts it all together to hopefully get the right stuff over that. Okay? Performance analysis, this has become a very big piece in the industry because of, you know, we have problems sometimes. People don't always get it right, and that's okay. It happens. They make mistakes. So why did the mistake happen? What's the problem? Are we seeing it, was it just Cindy? Or was it Cindy and Mike and Mark and Lisa and Jackie? Okay. You know, did we have enough people to, are we starting to see that change? We thought maybe, no, it wasn't just Cindy. It was everybody. All right, well, not everybody, but a good majority of folks. So that's all part of identifying gaps in our knowledge, gaps in our training, gaps eventually in our skill to do what we're supposed to do to run these plants. So there's a lot of things there that we monitor: performance indicators, effectiveness, a lot of different things. This is a very, very intense business. Most people in the line organizations who come to training don't understand how intense this stuff is, right? And then a lot of times we will hire in to our training organization to be our instructors, people who are from the line because you're technically competent. You know the business. You know, they get into training and you know what, after a year or so, they say, oh, go back to the line. This is like too much work, okay? Training is not easy. My point there is to simply, again, reinforce the fact that it just doesn't come out of a book. It just doesn't happen. There's a lot that goes behind a good quality training program. Okay, training solutions can be part of trying to fix the gaps when we have performance issues. And it's a team decision, what do we want to improve, and so on. We are very scientific about this, and we're evaluating against it all the time. How did you come up with that? What kind of, in 6 months or a year from now, what did you expect to see for improvement? So you had a lot of tagging errors, clearance and tagging errors maybe in the plant, and not licensed operators, right? And that, well, we didn't do the right thing. We have a trend here, and it is one, they're all doing, oh my gosh. So we're going to go back and revamp the training program and retrain on some of this stuff. Not everybody gets everything the first time. Just trying to learn and it's beautiful. Okay. We also reinforce a lot, and this will happen for each of you as you get into one of our sites hopefully someday. And we expect that your students, as students, you're going to be involved in these different aspects, in these different phases of the ADDIE process, A, D, D, I, and D. And then, of course, there's another set of criteria, so to speak, or guidelines for managers, supervisors, and finally one for instructors. Okay? A lot of words there. You got it on the slide. I'm not going to try to read all this to you, but through it all. There's a lot there. But you can take a look at it and think about it a little bit and see how we evolve it. But again, it's not just training saying this is what they have to have. It's a training and line partnership. Right? Without the line, we could be heading down the wrong road. Okay? So that's kind of a real quick and dirty, whatever of SAT. Okay? Systematic approach. ADDIE. Questions? Comments? What did I tell you that you didn't understand? Come on, I'm not that good. Somebody. Anything? Anything at all? Okay. So you've got how many pieces in ADDIE? 5. Okay, there you go. That's good. ADDIE, right? What's one of the most important pieces? Evaluation. Right? I almost said it, but evaluation. Okay. The E part, because that's that constant looking back. What did we teach? What did we? Did it take effect? Is the knowledge transferring to the skill? So as an example, I forgot your name. Carl. Paul told me before when I first came in, right? Knowledge. Hit the top button here if you want to have the green laser button. What was the first thing I said to Paul? Which button? Carl, which button?
Top button.
Top button, right? So, obviously, there was a performance guy there. He said it's just because he was an old guy. Probably true. Okay, so, all right, we're going to move into the accreditation objectives a little bit, all right? And we'll talk briefly about that, and then we'll pretty much have a good overview of everything in your house all fits together. So the accreditation objectives are actually built around that ADDIE process when you think about it. So we just got done talking about performance improvement, right? When things aren't going right with people, what do we got to do? Maybe we have to retrain them, or maybe we have to train them on something brand new. Okay? How do we manage it? Well, we manage it through systematic processes. We just don't do this stuff just for any old which way. There are these systematic processes. We have initial training, of course, which is where you first learn about whatever your job is going to be, and qualification. We also have then, let's go back. What was the key word? We train you and we do what?
Train.
We train you and then we train you some more, right? That's continuing training. We have people that, been in the plants for 20 some odd, 30 years. They spend a lot of time in training. Right now, the average in the industry is probably about 20 to 22% of your time at a given year is in training. So licensed operators, every 6 weeks, guess what? A week in training. Okay? Initial trainees in a licensed program. How long do you think that is?
Close to a year.
20 months. Okay? About 18 on average. Pretty close. Okay, so about a year and a half. That's just to get through the classroom training stuff. Okay? That's not even sitting time on the plant yet. So it's a big deal, big expenditure. Licensed candidate. Let's say you're all going to be in my license class, right? It's a go ahead. What do you think it's costing me to put you through that program? The utility, us, TVA. A lot. A lot. That's a good answer. Okay. What do you think it costs? You give me a number.
$1 million.
You're sticking with that $1 million. You're going to get that one somehow. Yeah, no. Not quite.
It's an answer in there somewhere.
But not quite. Anybody else with it?
100,000.
About $500,000.
Wow.
Yeah. About $500,000 to put a
Per
person
person?
through from beginning to end in a licensed training program. My point is, it's a big investment in you. Okay, not me, you. It's a big investment in you. That's why we do this stuff, because our goal is to get as many people through the program successfully. Our goal is not to fail people out of the program. That doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do you any good, it certainly doesn't do us any good. Especially if you put them through the thing for 18 months, you get to the NRC license exam and you fail. You're done. You're cooked. Stick a fork in you, it's over. So, it's not a good place to be. Sir?
So this week you're going to reimburse us or our schools?
Yeah, $1 million. Okay. Nice try there. Okay, so the contingent training, then we do training and the training evaluation. That's the part we talked about already. The training effectiveness. All right, how well did the program work? So, as you can see, the accreditation objectives, these that come out every 4 years and take a look at the quality of the program, like we're going to be doing this summer. We just finished up at Watts Bar with the technical training program, which include all 3 maintenance disciplines, RP, chemistry, and engineering. So 6 programs, basically. They come out, and every 4 years they evaluate, are we doing the right stuff? And that's what it's all about, to keep feedback and starting over again and looking where are we meeting the industry standards. Not TVA standards, the industry standards. Now, everybody's got a little different way of maybe accomplishing the same end, okay? But bottom line is we have standards that we live by in the industry. And it pretty much aligns right there with those 6 objectives. We do things like warning flags, which is INPO puts together every year. Focus areas, things that they see from all the evaluations and assessments that they do during the course of a year. And which is normally about 40, 45, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there's at least 45 different plants being evaluated every year by INPO teams on a week-long evaluation. All right? And those lessons learned and come up and are put together as warning flags. And you might have a little hard time seeing it. You might see it better on your handout, but it says things like, and this one's from 2010, but they update it every year. So right up here it says, you have weak leadership and ownership when you got these kinds of issues. You have weaknesses with the conduct of training evaluation when you have these kinds of things showing up. And every year they update it, and that's the bolded ones. It's hard to see there, but the bolded ones are the new ones that are added every year. As things get better in the industry, and they drop off the list. Okay? Doesn't mean they can't come back, but they drop off. Okay? So that's their way of helping us to be focusing on the right stuff. So from an accreditation standpoint, we've hit them very quickly with training for performance improvement. It's just training is looked at as a strategic tool to give you the right knowledge and skill to perform your tasks, but most importantly, to perform them safely. That's the key. And of course, obviously, you're always looking for reliable operations. When those plants are down, it's costing money. Okay, let's try it again. 1 million. I knew that was coming. I just knew it. I gotta have 3. You have anything stronger than Diet Coke? Okay. So, 1 million. Not bad. That's
Per day, we over.
pretty close, actually. It used to be about $1 million a day. Now it's up to almost $2 million a day, believe it or not. You know why? Think about it. Why does it cost so much money when a plant goes down? Sequoia goes down for a day.
No
We're
production.
losing about $2 million. Why?
You have no production, you have nothing to sell.
Outstanding. You got it right. No production. We're not, so that's why outages are such a big deal.
You
You've
got
heard
extra
that
people
word, right?
working to bring it back.
Outages are, I'm sorry, say again,
You
please.
got extra people working to bring it back around. to get
Absolutely.
back up.
Oh, yeah. We bring in well over 1,000 people just to work an outage
Overtime.
for 4 or 5 weeks at every site. That's the way it is in the industry. You basically bring in that many people just to work an outage. And that's in addition to your roughly 600-700 permanent staff. All right, so you got about, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people running around the plant for a very concentrated short period of time, about 4 or 5 weeks. And that's why we push so hard. I worked at a utility before TVA that was very much prided itself on we can do an outage, and believe it or not, we actually did them in 17 days. Pretty quick. Now, that's refueling. That's just moving, replacing a third of the fuel, shuffling it around the rest of the fuel, starting it back up. Pretty good, right? Button it up and get it back online. That's what it's all about. Money, money, money. But you got to do it safely. Don't forget it. Right? Always remember that part. But what happens when you take that approach? And I just shuffle the fuel.
You don't get enough
You don't
maintenance.
have time for repairs.
No repairs, no maintenance, right? Preventive maintenance is important stuff, right? So eventually it does catch up to you. So it's like, one way or the other, you're going to pay the piper. So, and it'll probably be more than, how much? $1 million. Right, okay. Okay, so training for performance improvement. Big deal in the industry. Are we always looking for ways through our training programs we can improve worker performance? That's what it's all about. Objective 2, again, is management training process and resources. How are we committed? Do we have the right processes in place to make the programs work and sustain them? Sustaining them is a big deal. Because when we go for accreditation renewal every 4 years, what the accrediting board wants to know, we'll get a little bit more into that in a few minutes, but what the accrediting board wants to know is not what we did so much in the past 4 years, that's important, but how do they know, how do they have the confidence that we're going to continue to do the right stuff for the next 4 years? That's what renewing is going forward, right? So that's a real big deal. We'll get to that in a minute. Initial training, as we mentioned, systematic approach to figure out what is it that our new folks, new hires need to know. Continuing training, now that you know it, we're going to let you know it again, and again, and again, all right? And that can often include additional new training. But we have, we take our task lists, and there can be hundreds of tasks, and we grade all those tasks every 2 years to see, are we hitting this one? And every task has to be refreshed. That's basically retraining with some periodicity. Usually that periodicity is no greater than about 3 years. Okay? Depends on frequency. If I do the job every day, or at least once a week, or something like that, do I need a lot of retraining on it? Probably not, because I'm doing it all the time. But the tasks that are very infrequent, right, the ones that I don't do very often, maybe once a year, once every 6 months, I'm probably going to see that training show up a little bit more frequently in my program, because my knowledge deteriorates, my skill deteriorates a little bit, right? So we train on those a little bit more than the others. All right, training and evaluation, we talked about that already. Objective 5 is really about how we implement the training. Are we using all the right things? Is it just classroom training, or are we finding better ways to teach like mock-ups? Right, you guys are all working on that mock-up, working in your yard. Like mock-ups, right? Like simulators. Big deal. Right? Lots of money there too. A big deal. So it's not just the knowledge, it's actually applying the knowledge within a training setting. That's what it's all about. And then, of course, systematically assess the effectiveness of the training. See that personnel and plant performance improves. There's a tie. There really is a tie there. And we've come to learn that very hard sometimes, the lessons over the years. If people don't perform, guess what? The plant won't perform. It's as simple as that. So it's important that two go together. Questions? Real quick? Anything on that? Okay. Uh-oh. Pop quiz.
We got the
It's
answers.
not because I'm old and you're calling me Pop. What?
We got the answers.
Yeah, I know. You weren't supposed to tell everybody else. I was going to see how smart. I was going to see if the rest of them were as smart as you. Okay. All right, so performance improvement. Which one is it? E. Whoops. There's the end. Well, I could get it to Mexico one time, I guess. Is this going to work one? It's supposed to go like 1 arrow at a time.
Oh.
That's okay. We'll just go right to the answers. Thank you, Alex.
All right.
Okay. Don't you have to be somewhere?
Right here.
Other than here?
Right here.
So if you were scoring yourself and you didn't know the answers were there, here's what the answers would be. So performance improvement is like that goes down to letter what? We use the phonetic alphabet. So what's E?
Echo.
Echo, great, okay. Identify training solutions to improve performance. Duh. Okay, management of training. Alpha, right? Apply the right resources to training. Initial training down to Foxtrot, complete qualification requirements, continue after you get qualified initially, right? To do your job. Continuing training, number 4 there, goes right over to Charlie. And includes just-in-time training. So even though I mentioned a lot that a lot of our training is planned and pre-planned and even planned out for 5 years in advance, we know what you're going to be taking 5 years from now for the training. We have to have 5-year plans. All right? Now, they get modified a little bit as time goes on, obviously. But there's also another important piece of it that's called just-in-time training. What do you think that means?
For the emergencies that are coming up.
Could be emergencies, right? Right. But it's still planned, like a refueling outage. Okay? We got to do some specialized training every time we're going to bring the plant down because we, one, got to bring it down safely. Right? We got to get it online, get it down, because every day that we're coasting down, guess what's going out the door?
Money.
Money! There we go again, right? Money. Okay? So then once it's down, it's in mode 0, we're down. Now it's time to, get it done. Get whatever maintenance has to get done, get that fuel done, move it around and replace and so on. So we do a lot of just-in-time training on that. We get a new piece of equipment. We do just-in-time training before that equipment comes in and gets put into place. Doesn't do any good if I put a new plant process computer in the control room and the operators don't know how to use it. In fact, we're just going to shut the plant down if we do that because they have to have that. So we have to train before that so that it's in place and usable, so that the knowledge and skill is there. Right, so just-in-time training is a big deal as well. Okay, conduct of training goes up here to Bravo, facilitate training and student evaluation activities, and finally, training effectiveness, monitoring expected training outcomes. Right? Did we get what we paid for, basically? Why we put you through training, did your knowledge and skill improve? That's what it's all about. That's why we constantly assess that and evaluate going forward. Okay? Make sense? Okay, so the accreditation process. It is governed by this document, ACAD 02002. It's been revised several times over the years since it initially came out back in the 1980s. After post-TMI and the industry got together and said, gee, how are we going to do this? How are we going to follow systematic approach? Yeah, what does that mean? Okay. So it came out to, there's a set of objectives and criteria. There's 6 objectives. We've touched on those already. Right? And then criteria under those 6 objectives. They vary a little bit objective by objective, but there's 43 criteria. And that's what we get assessed against. So 43 criteria. Many years ago, back in the dark ages when I was doing this stuff, there was actually 11 objectives. Then we reduced them to 8 in 1991. From there, we went down to the current 6. So why do you think that is? Are we lessening our standards? We're getting better. Okay, that's one answer. One county heard from? No, we are getting better.
Streamlining the training.
I'm sorry?
Streamlining the training.
Well, streamlining a little bit, but we also got a little bit smarter about some of the things. Back in when there was the 11 objectives, there was a whole objective just based on facilities. okay? Because not everybody had very high quality training facilities. Most every plant you go to today, you'll see a very, high quality training center, right? With classrooms and bells and whistles and projectors and simulators and flow loop simulators and all that kind of stuff, right? So we weren't very good. So over the years, as we got better, the industry figured, well, we can kind of get rid of this objective. We still look at it from under objective 2, management, resources, and so on. Resources not only means people, means facilities, materials, and so on. Is all that available to promote and support the quality of the training program? If not, we've got to do something about that. But it's been reduced down to one of those criteria under objective 2, a criterion under objective 2, versus a whole standalone objective, right? So we went from 11 down to, so we got smarter about how we do business, we got better about how we conduct our business, and we were able to relax a little bit of the standards to some degree. Actually combine, not relax, that's a bad word. Scratch that, jury didn't hear that, okay? Relax is not a good, it's still as rigorous as it's ever been, but it's just a little bit better packaged today, okay? Because of some of the advancements we've been able to make over the years. Okay, so in the accrediting process, you've got the NRC, yeah, they play games, they got their fingers in this, all right? But again, we still have to satisfy through our accrediting process the new reg, right? The Nuclear Regulatory Commission's process, which is the training rule. It's called the training rule. There's one other one, it's called the maintenance rule. And every utility has to abide by that maintenance rule as well. But the training rule is the one that we're most concerned with from obviously from the training standpoint. INPO gets involved, they create that process that we've been talking about to meet the requirements, and they evaluate, as I mentioned many times, evaluate the site performance. Nuclear Power Group and TVA, we achieve and maintain the accreditation, we perform the self-assessments, that's where I come into play, making sure that our 12 programs at all 3 sites meet our standards. Okay, I've got people in each of the sites that report to me in corporate that do this on an everyday basis, make sure that what we're supposed to be doing, we're doing. All right, that we're kind of the internal police, you might say, kind of a QA function, but within training. And then there's the National Nuclear Accrediting Board, which is the ones who every 4 years you get to go see down in Atlanta at INPO, and you tell them what you've been doing for the 4 years and how you're going to sustain it for the next 4 years. And they say, yay, verily, you've done well, we're going to renew your programs. Or they say, we're going to put you on probation so you can go fix these programs because they're not right. And what does that cost us again? Not $1 million, stop. What? How much? About 10 million, right? 10, 12 million. Ma'am?
Is the accrediting board part of INPO?
No, good question. Very good question. No, it's an independent board, and I'm going to get to just a breakdown real quick here, but that's a really good question. No, they are not. They're independent on purpose. Oh, okay, by design. And maybe hold me to that.
Okay.
If I don't explain it satisfactorily, no, seriously, challenge me. Okay?
Okay.
It's okay. Well, it's really not okay. Okay, so it's up for every 4 years, and there's kind of a cycle. So you have year 1 is right after you get done with a review, then year 2, and so on. It goes around and around. Where a lot of plants fall into problems is they kind of, instead of maintaining a high quality training program continuously, which is what I strive for in our training programs, we're not always there yet. I got to be frank. I'll be honest with you. But I want a high quality training program. I don't care if INPO walks in or the NRC walks in today. It doesn't matter. They're going to see high quality training. Where plants run into trouble as they go through this cycle, they get that renewal done, and guess what? Everybody kind of forgets about it. It kind of drops off the face of the earth. You know, back burner. Then second year, maybe we're going to start doing a little something more. Right? By the 3rd year, when it comes up to the 4th year, with, they're coming. It's kind of like the Russians are coming. Nah, INPO's coming. And I saw that for many years as an INPO employee on these teams. By year 3, all of a sudden, man, there's all kinds of stuff happening. Man, this is a great training. Man, you fixed all those problems. What'd you do the other 2 years? What'd you do the other 3 years? So they got to get their skin in the game all 4 years. It's a constant. The point of this graph is it's a constant project. It's not a once every 4 years you ramp up, get through the accreditation and then back down again. Down here, back up. Okay, 3rd year, back up. And get ready for that 4th year. No. it goes on. So we continuously evaluate the health of the programs through a lot of different things, like the plan evaluate, the evaluation measures we talked about, the assessments, constantly do self-assessments, constantly are looking at performance indicators every month. Training up, training down, where's the problems, that kind of thing. So it gets a lot of attention. It's a big business. Okay, so part of the process is this. First we do a self-evaluation. Now, in the course of the 4 years, we do many assessments, usually on the order of 40 to 50 over the course of that many of those 4 years, right, on these programs. But there's a big one that's called a self-evaluation where at each utility takes a look at the 6 accreditation objectives, identifies where we're doing well, how we're meeting those objectives, and we write a report. Or how we maybe are falling a little bit short. It's self-incrimination to some degree, but it's what's expected in the industry. All right? It's the way we do business. So we identify our strengths, what we're doing well, where we can improve against those 6 objectives. We have to either show that we've corrected the weakness, and this goes over the 4 years now. It's not just when we're writing a report 6 months before the team's coming in. It's over the 4 years. How do we correct it? Or if we just did discover it, because sometimes that could happen, what are we doing to fix it? Do we have a plan in place? How are we going to fix it? Then we identify ways to improve people and the processes, and we write what's called an ASCR, or an Accreditation Self-Evaluation Report. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. It gets a lot of scrutiny, and it takes, believe it or not, the better part of a year to write. Okay? It takes a better part of a year to write because of what you want to say and how you can say it. You can only use up to about 40 pages to write this report. It used to be years ago, you could write as much as you wanted. Some of these reports, back when I started this business, were 100, 120, 130 pages long. Too much. Right? The accrediting board, which we'll get to, the accrediting board said, you're killing us. You can't read all this stuff. Okay? So they made us about 10 years ago, cut the reports down quite a bit. So bottom line is, that's a challenge. You say, oh, that's much easier now. You don't have to fill up 120 pages, Tom. You only got to do 40. Right? Well, try to tell your story for 6 training programs in a smaller amount of space, right? It's hard. So you have to be very scientific on it, what you say and how you say it. And again, it's a balanced report, so it says some things are pretty good that we're doing. Some things, well, we could do better. All right? So that's okay. So that's the self-evaluation. Then a team comes in, as I mentioned, for a week-long visit. I always tell folks when we talk about plants, there's no such thing. It's called an ATV, Accreditation Team Visit. There's no V about it. It's an assessment. It's an evaluation. It's not a, hey, Cindy, nice to see you again. Let's have a cup of coffee. That's a visit. And what it's about. They dig, and nothing can be held back. They have access to anything and every record, whatever. Every assessment you've done over those 4 years, everything. They can talk to anybody. Trainees, they definitely talk to trainees. That's clear. They interview trainees. I mean, they're not just passing in the hall. How's it going? You know, you learned some stuff? Yeah. No, it's a formal interview process with trainers and certainly, of course, with the line folks. Because the reason we do this training is for the line. It's not for training, it's for the line. All right? So they compare our programs to the objectives and criteria. 6 objectives, how many? 6 criteria? 43. Okay. Add the self-evaluation report. Okay. What they do is after they come in and they do that big extensive review for a week, they write a report, which is commonly referred to as the blue pages. Why? Because guess what? They print them on blue paper. Okay. How unique is that? And that's simply so that the accrediting board, when they get the report, they say, oh, this is the utilities report, the ASCR part. That's white pages. And the team's report that supplements it is the blue pages. So they can tell, you know, what we've been working on for a year plus, and then what the team comes in and derives within a week. So it's pretty intense. So those two go together. All right? Then you get to the accrediting board. This is, who asked? Yeah, you asked the question. Chet, you asked. Would you mind staying away from that? I'm kidding you. This is where the accrediting board comes into play. Step number 3, right? And they have basically the report that we've written, the blue pages, with any responses to any issues that the team identifies. And their job is to come in and be skeptical of what we're doing to see if we're maybe missing something. Sometimes, you know, in this business, you can get so close to something, you miss something that's pretty obvious, or can be pretty obvious. And the teams are made up of folks from INPO as well as other utilities. I just got back from Palo Verde about a month ago. Every year I go on one of these teams. And I got back from Palo Verde. We went out there, assessed them for the week, and fortunately didn't come up with any team issues. They had their own issues, and we validated that they were accurate and they were on target for fixing them and that kind of thing. But it's pretty intense. That was a team of about 12 people. All right, not a big team. In the old days, when I was taking teams out, we used to take out about 18 people at a time. It was a pretty big team. People were spread all over the place doing stuff. But anyway, so the accrediting board, it makes decisions. Now, what they make the decision on is the ACER, the team report, that blue page stuff, and they also look at some operating data. So, as an example, we're going to be going to the accrediting board down in Atlanta on April 19th for the operator programs at Sequoia. If you look at the power history curve at Sequoia, which these people will have in front of them, and they will have studied, they will see running down. They will see back up, running down. There's 12 trips in a 4-year period. That's a lot. We're going to have to have a really fancy story as to why that happened. All right. Their main objective is to find out, was training not a part of that? Why, you know, how did training play a part in fixing some of those trips, those scrams, right? So training gets brought in pretty heavily, obviously. And so what we said is they can grant renewal of accreditation. That's good for the next 4 years. See you in 4. Or they can put you on a probation status for 6 months, up to 6 months. That's the max. That's where all that money comes in, because what are you doing when you're fixing training programs? What do you do? I'm sorry?
Spending money.
Well, yeah, spending money on what? Trainers. How do I get, okay, so my training program is broken, right? So if it's broken, how am I going to fix it? What am I going to do? I'm going to do maybe new analysis, right? I'm going to hire a heck of a lot of contractors, right? Because obviously we couldn't do it with our in-house people. We still got to do what we normally do every day. So we got to get these programs fixed in 6 months. Well, I got to go hire a bunch of bodies to run around the training center, work with the plant line, and so on. Maybe reanalyze tasks, rewrite lesson materials. We maybe have to do retraining of people, so on. So it's a big, big, costly deal, all right? There's contractors out there that just live for pit plants to go on probation. That's what they do. They go from plant to plant around the country. And they get paid, how much did we say before? We said 40 was a nice number, right? Pretty close. Well, you know, average contractor these days coming in and working to fix, or just working in nuclear training, are pulling down about $150 an hour somewhere. It's a lot of money. So we obviously want to do it ourselves and do it our own way as best. Yes, sir.
Do they differentiate between like the plant workers that are and contracted workers who are, you know, contract workers where you can come in, quit training, go in and do a job in the plant, you know, so that's where most of your accidents and stuff happens here.
Okay.
And it just says they.
So what's the difference between a contracted worker and a regular guy like me, like a permanent employee? There you go.
More training.
Okay.
Longer
Well,
training.
we have to validate their qualifications before they come in, all right, with the vendor or contractor company. If they don't meet our training program requirements, objectives, and so on, we can't hire them. Because a lot of contract companies run their own training programs, and that's fine. That's fine. And they, you know, so we validate against them. Before anybody starts on the job, we've got to validate that. Once they're on the job, the rule is, if you're on the job as what's considered a long-term contract employee, that means greater than 6 months, you must participate in the continuing training program like a regular employee, okay, to keep your knowledge and skill up as well. All right, so good. Did that answer what you were asking? Okay, good. Yeah, so there is a difference, obviously, but they're really the same in the end. Okay, we're responsible, and we're responsible for them. They screw up. Who owns the license? We do. Who does the NRC come after? Us. They don't go after the contractor. That's our fault for not making sure that the contractor either maintains his qualifications or her qualifications or came in with the proper ones in the first place. And all this is documented. Paper, paper, paper. Okay?
Okay,
Yes?
if a contractor or employee comes in and needs a qualification on something, TBA would help them gain that qualification, though,
Sometimes.
sometimes.
Sometimes, not necessarily. There's a lot of them out there. So I can pretty much say, these two don't meet our standards, send me two more. Simple as that. Even to the point of instructors. We have to rely on sometimes contract instructors to teach some of our classes when we ramp up and do certain activities. And they may come in for several months to teach some selected classes. They have to show that they've got qualifications to be an instructor, number one, and the technical knowledge, number two. We put them through pilot training for assessment, basically. There have been times, it's been rare, but there have been times when we've said, no, sorry, you're not cutting it for us. Call up the vendor, send us somebody else. It happens. Not very often, but it happens. Most of the professionals, contract or utility employed, are exactly that. They're professionals. They know the business. They've been around it a while, and they know the right things to do. So it's real good money. So why would you want to screw that up, right? You know, it's very simple. Money talks. Okay. So we got time to we want to get the renewal for the next 4 years, or the probation up to 180 days, or they can withdraw accreditation. So what does that sound like to you? Doesn't sound good, does it? For starters. Say it again?
Very bad.
Very bad. Well, that's about right. That's it. Very good.
Much worse.
Yeah. So they could withdraw accreditation. In other words, they could say, you know, you had these programs, they've been accredited for 20 years, but you just don't meet the standards anymore. We're going to take away your accreditation. What will that do to a nuclear power plant?
Shut it down.
Shut it down immediately. Doesn't matter which programs, it's going to shut it down. Why is it going to shut it down? Any idea?
Because you don't want to meet your license.
Well, in operator space, right, you can't because we're meeting that law, right? Our accreditation process is intended to meet the law of the NRC. And if we can't meet that law through our accreditation process because the program is broken, what are they going to do to those licensed operators? Pull their licenses, okay? So you can't run a plant without licensed operators, simple as that. Same with maintenance folks and so on. They don't have licenses and so on, but do you really want somebody that doesn't know how to fix your car, fixing your car? I don't think so. You don't want me trying to fix your car. That's my point. All right? Same thing here. You don't want people who are less knowledgeable and skilled than they should be fixing your plant, because that just leads to problems. Okay? Big problems.
Has this
Sorry.
ever happened where they've had a plant shut down for that reason?
Good question. So, Lisa, you got a big smile on your face. You know the answer.
We were just talking about that.
It's actually never happened. Okay? It's never happened, fortunately, in Israel. There's been lots and lots and lots of plants that are programs that have gone on probation. But they've worked hard, they've spent lots of money. Think about it. Okay, so I'm going to invest in a whole lot of money because I went on probation and it's going to cost me $10 million. 10, whatever, right? But when that plant's operating, how much am I making?
$2 million a day.
$2 million a day, okay? So you put all that, it doesn't take long to figure that, do that math, right? And say, okay, we shouldn't have been here, we don't want to have to spend this money, but you know what? It's going to be a lot cheaper in the long run to fix the programs, get them right, get the plant back up and operating the right way, and you know. And because you go on probation, it doesn't mean the plant shuts down, don't get me wrong there. The plant still continues, but you have 6 months to go fix it, all right? To fix the training programs, is what I'm saying. So the plant still can operate, but the quality of the training is suspect, and that has to be fixed. And then you go back through this process again. You go back and you write another ASCR. A team will come back again in 6 months and take a look again. And you'll go back to the accrediting board in Atlanta and tell them your story one more time with how you fixed it. It's usually a different set of people that go back on the second time. Why is that? There you go. For the most part, that happens. I'm telling you, that happens. I have been to plants where site vice presidents have been canned because of this stuff. So it's not just the $10 million that it costs to go fix the program. It's also costing sometimes people's livelihoods. Okay, plant managers, operators, training directors. I mean, it's a volatile position. These are all volatile jobs. Well, and a lot of it has to do with how well these programs run. Right?
If it's their responsibility to oversee them, though, sometimes those are the people that have to go.
No question about it. Not everybody's cut out to do this job. All right, and you have to weed those folks out. Very good point. Right? But so it has a big impact on a lot of things that you don't always think about. So it costs money for sure to the plant. Like I said, you know, if we're spending $10 million to go fix training programs, that means we're not going to do something else for our plant this year, right? In our operating budget, because there's $10 million down the drain, and probably a different site vice president, a different plant manager. If it's operator program, the new ops manager, it happens, and that trickles all the way down into the training organization. So some of the training folks will get replaced that maybe that had something to do with it. It's not all doom and gloom, don't get me wrong, but it can have an impact, and it can be pretty severe. So one other reason that we hadn't touched on so far is you will shut down your plant because why?
Because you can't.
Not just because the training programs have been proven to be less than adequate.
You have no licensed operators anymore.
We have no licensed operators, right? We kind of touched on that already, right? What else?
Well, you can't compromise the safety of other people if it's.
Can't compromise safety, all these good reasons. There's one other piece. You don't run a multi-billion-dollar place without insurance. You lose your insurance that quickly. Overnight, it'll be gone. All right? So you take the sword, you stick it in your belly, and you say, okay, we're going to shut ourselves down. Because they're not going to license you. They're not going to insure you. Okay? If you had it withdrawn, not probation. But fortunately, that has never happened in the industry. And my point is, this is you know, all very highly scrutinized, highly assessed, highly evaluated. So what I'm really trying to emphasize to you all is, this isn't just a fly-by-night operation. These training programs are well thought out, strongly assessed, continuously assessed. So what you're getting, you know, because we have to have the confidence of the public that we know how to run those plants. Because I'll be damned if at 2 o'clock in the morning you're on shift and something goes wrong, I better know that you know what you're doing. Because I don't really want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go to the plant. Sorry. So you better know. So my investment in you is make sure you understand what you're doing. Make sure you do the best of your ability. Okay? So, okay. So maintain the accreditation as we talked about before. It goes on and on all 4 years. You just stop after you get the renewal and you forget about it for 3 years and then ramp up again for a year. It doesn't work that way. All this stuff continues to go on. Okay? How are we doing on time? Please, anybody? Cindy?
We said 7. I don't know what time it is.
10 minutes over.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, so hang with me just a few more minutes, guys. Doing great. Okay, really appreciate what you're all doing. So, crediting board, all right? Who's on it? 5 people sit on every board. There's actually a pool of about 25 to 30 people. They don't sit every board, but the boards meet every month, all right? There's 4 utilities that are evaluated every month throughout the year, half a day. So 4 utilities come in, 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, typically on a Wednesday, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon on a Thursday. Sequoia, when we go on April 19th, we're on Thursday afternoon. So we're the last of the 4, right? What the board is made up of, it is an independent bunch, okay? They are not part of INPO, that's clear. They are not INPO employees, they are independent of INPO. Yes, they get paid a stipend, obviously, to do this. They don't, they don't do it for free. But they're pretty high-powered folks. There's 2 folks in the nuclear power industry. So as an example, the chief operating officer of all of TVA, now this is the boss of the chief nuclear officer, is a fellow by the name of Bill McCullum. Bill's going to retire this June. But right now, and for the past couple of years, Bill's been on the accrediting board. And he can't sit for our programs, obviously. That would be a little biased, possibly. Or it might get really ugly. Bill might say, what? I know where the skeletons are. But anyway, so two of that level, COOs, chief nuclear officers, high-powered people that know this business. And you're not going to snow them when you get down to Atlanta and you're talking to these people for about a couple to 3 hours. Okay, so it's a very high-powered function and people that are on this board. One from the academic world, university level. So let me give you an example. What do you think that might be? Huh? Okay. Well, for example, Dean of Nuclear Engineering, School of Nuclear Engineering. Fellow by one of the ones that I got to know pretty well over the years. He went out on teams with me as an observer because they have to go out, as accrediting board members, they have to go out at least once a year and observe a team in the field for a week. That's a requirement to see how the process is being applied. What is the team really you know, digging down, digging hard, finding whatever they can find, all right? So a fellow by the name of Dr. Dale Klein. Ring a bell to anybody? Maybe not. Might not. Well, Dale is he was the Dean of Nuclear Engineering, I think he still is, at University of Texas, Austin. He's also the immediate past chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Pretty high-powered guy, sitting on the board, right? He sat on the board for probably 6-7 years. You know, I think a couple different stints. Then we have somebody from a corporate training world. Not nuclear training now, I'm talking things like Texas Instruments, United Airlines. And you say, Tom, what do those people know about nuclear training?
Outside view.
How to structure it.
Go ahead, say again.
Outside view.
Outside view, number one. Your point?
They've got experience structuring the training program.
They use systematic approach in their programs as well. They know. Actually, when you get to a board meeting and these 5 people are firing away questions, the toughest questions typically come from those non-nuclear individuals on the board. They know the process. They know how this is supposed to work. They know how what good training looks like. And they're a challenge to our teams that go down to Atlanta to sit in front of these boards. They're a real challenge. They ask some very, very, very tough questions. So, so an example there, many years ago, a fellow by the name of Ed Carroll. Ed was the vice president of training for United Airlines. Ed is actually the first individual, this was back in the 80s when all this got started, pretty significantly. Ed is the fellow who actually introduced the nuclear industry to using what as a training tool? Simulators. We didn't use them. We didn't even know they existed. He said, you know, we do this stuff when we fly airplanes that we, you know, make believe. We put the pilots in these things called simulators. Geez, that's a good idea. Maybe we ought to have simulators for our operators to practice on, to make their mistakes on, so they don't do it in the plant. Right? North Anna had a major event several years ago. News media interviewed one of the operators who was in the control room at the time of the event. And the question was, have you ever seen something like this before? It was pretty significant. It wasn't a TMI, but I'll tell you, it was about that far away from it. This is back in the early 90s, I think it was. About that far away from it. Couldn't have been a TMI. But the operators knew what they were doing, shut the plant down safely, and everything was fine. So the news guy says, well, you know, you ever seen anything like this before? Honestly, it's a true story. The operator says, yep, I've seen it 69 times. 69 times? You mean this has happened 69 times? He says, no, 68 of them were in the simulator. That's what I was training on. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. We're getting grand. I need this on anyway. All right. So anyway, and then you have one person nominated by the NRC. Doesn't mean it's an NRC person. It could be a, oh, now I really did it, didn't I? We're almost at the end anyway. But it's a person nominated by the NRC. It could be another academic person, something like that. Okay?
Is usually someone from the NRC or completely outside?
No, not from the NRC at all.
It has to be outside.
Yeah. Now, but since you raised that question, I wish you really hadn't. Just kidding. Trying to get back to, well, I don't want to do this, but yeah. Hang with me a minute, folks. I can't get the little. Let me come back up. From the outside, the NRC at these accrediting board meetings, they actually have a representative who sits and observes, listens. Is this a rubber stamp process, or is this for real? Are these 5 people putting the utility folks through their paces and really challenging them that they know what they're doing with these training programs? Or is it just that, yeah, you're doing good for a number of years now, so have a nice day? No, it's a hard challenge. So the NRC observes virtually every accrediting board, every one. Because what are we doing? We are basically implementing their regulation, their rule. They got to know. Like I come here and watch what you guys are going to be doing, how you're getting taught. By the same token, they're watching how this process works to make sure that it's really challenging and pushing hard for the quality, the highest quality training possible. Right? So the NRC plays a big part in this. They also have the ability through what's called a 1220 audit. They can come in at any time and do this stuff that we just talked about with accreditation teams coming in once every 4 years. They can, which are always announced about a year ahead. So, because you'd have that ramp up time, you know. You just put it there. Through a 1220 audit, the NRC can come in at any time they want, unannounced. I actually lived through one of those many years ago at a plant up in the upper Midwest. Monday morning, and they came, 7- to 8-person team, said, we're here to evaluate your training programs. I really couldn't throw them out. Okay, I had to let them do it. Fortunately, it was okay. And they use basically, they have their own set of objectives and criteria, which are virtually the same as what we've talked about here tonight. Okay, so the two do marry up, but you know that's always an opportunity where they can come in and just say, yeah, I just want to take a look at your programs. We're going to be here for a few days. And this happens, but so we got to be ready. But if we're doing the right thing by our training program, which is really the right thing by all of you, we have nothing to hide. I don't care. Come on in. That's fine. Anytime you want. Anybody who wants to come in, no big deal. That's what it's all about. That's the level of confidence that we should have in our programs if we're doing all the stuff that we've been talking about and doing it consistently. Okay, so we talked about they can do initial accreditation, review, so on. And it's typically staggered, but that doesn't always work out quite that way. It's a big deal. Okay, so back to the objectives. What did we learn today or tonight? As we very quickly talked about. I got to do it this way because I'm a newbie. Okay, got to have your objectives, right? Okay, history, a little bit of the history. Where did it start? Where did it start?
1979.
History of training in the nuclear power industry. It actually goes back to obviously before that, Atomic Energy Commission, so on, transformed. You know, it grew out of basically, we didn't really cover that part too much, but it grew out of the atomic age back in the 40s and the early 50s, right? And to, atoms for peace. Ever hear that slogan? Right? Atoms for peace. By the way, back in those days, I wasn't quite alive yet. I'm getting smart now. I still don't look on your face. You know, I said 19, not 18. So, the whole slogan for promoting nuclear energy back in those days, going from bombs to using it for peaceful purposes, the power thing was that it would be so cheap you wouldn't even need to meter it. Well, how'd that work out for us? Okay, not too good, but it's still one of the cheaper ways of producing energy. Bottom line, it's a good profession, folks. Okay, lots of opportunities, and I'm really glad you're all in these programs. It's a career. It'll be a career for you. The 5 phases, what are they? ADDIE, right? ADDIE.
Analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation.
Okay. How are training decisions made?
Lots of evaluation.
A lot of evaluation, a lot of analysis, and so on. We're going to train this, we don't train this. There are certain things that are called skill of the craft that we expect people to just know, right? Like, you know, which end of the screwdriver do you hold? Okay. No, I'm kidding, but obviously, you know, which button do you push on this thing? Okay. Skill of the craft. Obviously, you didn't get that when the microphone came. All right. Discussion role of training program. What as students, as trainees in our training programs at our sites, what things might you participate in? What do you do?
You learn, you feedback.
You learn, you attend class, right? That's obviously you got to do that because it's required. You can't opt out. You have to go. But what else can you do to help make sure that your training program is as good as it can be? That gives you the knowledge. Feedback, excellent. Feedback, big one, right? That is the big one. And then feedback comes in many ways. Could be a survey, could be just sitting down and talking with you, could be through those curriculum review committees where you get to give your input, right, to a community of people to make the program better. Great, good job. 6 info objectives and 43 criteria. We'll go back to that again. And then how is it maintained? What's the cycle? How many years? 4. So every 4 years it comes back around. Now, just because the NRC can pop in and do their little 1220 doesn't mean INPO can. If a plant's starting to run poorly, year after accreditation's been renewed, and it's pretty obvious that the operators don't know what they're doing. Got a lot of trips going on, plant's down more than it's up, so on. INPO has the right to come back in at any time and do another evaluation, another assessment, even so they can short cycle. That doesn't happen obviously very often either, but it can. Right? So that's basically it. It's how your programs, if I can wrap it up a little bit or summarize it, it's how your programs are developed. It's why we go through pretty extensive work to try to make sure that the training programs, particularly at the site, meet all this rigor. Okay, and it's a lot of rigor, as you can see. And it's a lot of assessments. It's not just developing the program and analyzing the stuff that you're going to do, but then it's all that evaluation, all that assessment, and all that outside look to assess, are we doing the right stuff? Because we have not TVA standards, we have industry standards. And again, we have to meet those standards or we don't operate. As simple as that. Okay? So that's what it's all about. Any other questions, final thoughts?
Yeah, I had a question about how does sort of the upper, what am I trying to say, the food chain, going up the management of evaluators and the
Okay.
folks there, look at training on more of an individual level. I mean, like let's, say hypothetically you had a couple of guys that are, both of them are HV techs, right? And they're both great, do well, always show up, work on time, do the on-the-job training that they have, and it's fine. They all, pass it through. Right? And you got one guy, and he's doing great and doing what he should do, but he's satisfied that he's making good money and not doing.
Leave me alone.
And then you got another guy that wants to have his master's and wants to be a CHP and wants,
So how do we look at those people?
How is that handled or supported or?
It's a good question. The only program that really is involved with kind of what we call an upper out program, we don't have it yet at TVA, some utilities do, is basically people that come in as a non-licensed operator are expected to go on at some point in their career to get a license. And what that is a pipeline of feeding people, and then you backfill the non-licensed people.
Right.
And they learn, and after 3, 4, 5 years, they're sitting for a license. They go through that program. That's basically it. Most of the other programs, we didn't cover the 12, did we? Okay, let's do that. So let's do that. Okay, so operator programs are 6. Non-licensed operator, initial license training, continuing license training, shift technical advisor, shift senior reactor operator, and shift manager. Okay, those are the 6 operator programs. Maintenance, and the other side of the house, so to speak, are what's called, lumped together as the technical programs. I did mention those just briefly. So you've got electrical maintenance and supervisor, by the way, mechanical maintenance and supervisors, and instrument and control. Right? Then you have radiation protection technicians, chemistry technicians, and engineering support personnel. Right? So there's 12 programs. I don't have my fingers. 12 programs and 2 toes. Okay, there you go. But those are the 12 programs. But of those other programs, there's really not that progression. I mean, there's progression in all the programs. Engineers progress constantly, but they go from an associate engineer possibly to a principal engineer to a senior engineer, whatever. I don't even know what all the progressions are. Every utility's got a different name for them. But maintenance is fairly straightforward maintenance. Now you can aspire to be a maintenance supervisor. Get out of the bargaining unit as an example. Get into the exempt ranks of management and so on. So there are opportunities to do that, and we're always looking for people to do that. To who's a good candidate to move up the ranks.
Right.
So, but I thought that maybe back to your initial point, if people are good at what they do and they're satisfied at what they're doing, fine. Nothing better than having a satisfied, really good chem tech or maintenance mechanic. There's no need to push. A lot of people don't feel that way, frankly. I do. Right. I don't feel, if a non-licensed operator is very satisfied and does a hell of a good job day in and day out, is there all the time, and you can count on that person, why are we pushing them along? If they're happy, leave them be. They're happy. But it's not always the philosophy in all the industry. So some programs push.
Well, it's just like the analogy you made about the mechanic, to say, I mean, you got a guy over here, he can fix your car, he can do well, but you got this guy over here, and he's like been with NASCAR for 25 years and builds engines, and, you had your pick between the 2 guys, but that's the guy you want, So, I know it would never be the case, but, if you had your choice to have a team of junior techs that all were CHPs, And a team that
I
wasn't.
mean, we always want it through training, we're always constantly enhancing your knowledge.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what continuing training is all about. We train you and we train you and we still train you, you know, right? And then the reason being is because things do change. And, you know, and sometimes knowledge deteriorates. You don't remember everything from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and so on. So we refresh that knowledge and introduce new concepts and so on. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change your position. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you didn't go to the race car driver. I see what they do to some cars. I don't want them doing that to my car. Okay. Total wreck. All right. Other questions?
Actually, sure. Along the lines of how you're saying that there's so many levels in the operators for training. What does it look like on our RP side? Because you know, it seems like for us, like we're gaining our education in school, and then we're pretty much having to prove ourselves for 6 months.
Right.
Why is it not as
You're a junior tech, you can be, you know, the rest of the senior tech and so on. So there's opportunities to get promoted. There's obviously been opportunities for better pay.
But what does the training look like on the job? Yeah, the operators, when they get out of school, they go into the EGO program. If they go into the operator program, or they go for 18 months. What does it look like on the RP side?
You come in, you go through, you know, and then we're going to give you credit for a lot of what you learned here already, right? But then there are plant-specific aspects that you may not have had, you know, in the four walls here, so to speak. So that's going to be part of your initial training program. You'll go through a version of an initial training program. Lisa, does that make sense?
The operators do not get any credit for any of the training.
Right, they're not getting.
They're not like
They're not. They go through the entire program because it's so plant specific. To even to that point, I could have been a licensed operator at Palo Verde out in Arizona. Okay, I come to work at Sequoia. I had a license. I can skip all this training stuff, right? Nope, can't do it. Start all over again. That's why you'll see most licensed operators, particularly, once they're licensed, they don't go anywhere because they don't really want to have to go back through a whole initial training program of 18 months to 2 years. You know, that's a big chunk of time. So, yeah. But there's definitely opportunities to. Yeah, you're going to get credit for a lot of what you learn here, and then you're going to move into an advanced level, I would say, of what needs from the initial program. Make sense?
Yeah, but it's just not a structured like classroom.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's just probably not 18 months.
No. I mean, if you came in cold off the street with no prior education or experience, you know, the standard RP Tech program is running, what, about 12 months or something, initial program. So that should be cut down a little bit or something like that. Anyway, well, that's right, we don't pay you while you're in training.
What's the percentage?
The longer we can drag it out, the more money we save, let's be honest. And, you know, at his salary, $1 million a day, you know. Questions? I hope that, did I answer your question a little bit?
I was just saying, what's the percentage of finding employees by drawing the streets, or you know, that you try to hire a lot of
Not a lot.
fresh on the sidewalk.
Not a lot. Yeah. Not too much. A lot of the RP techs have traditionally come through places like Portland, you know, contract firms where we know their quality of their training and education, and, you know, but they have to start somewhere too.
Oh, sure.
Back when I was in the training program, there used to be a pretty elaborate HP Tech training program at TBA, and at one time TBA had one of the best training programs. And it was considered to have the best one, but now I don't know why they didn't do away with it.
You know, whatever.
Money.
Back, you know. Money.
So is Andy?
Okay.
That's when the plants were being built. They're not. That's when the
Thank you
plants were being
for your
built.
attention.
They're